In the past, the US government created two separate emergency issue series of paper money, which it could demonetize at any time at its sole discretion, leaving anybody who held this money with a piece of paper worth nothing more than any other regular piece of paper. What's up guys, my name is Adam Nelson and I make videos all about money. Today we're going to be talking about emergency issue paper money. And you may be wondering, what's stopping the government from doing this again and demonetizing the paper money that you have in your wallet today? Can they just issue a statement and immediately render all the cash in your wallet worthless? And I'll get to that shortly, but first, in order to understand why the government would issue this special series of money that it could demonetize at any time, sort of like how YouTube can do to any cool video out there, well, first we need to understand a little bit of context. Both of these emergency issue funds were created during the Second World War, and they're known as the Hawaii overprint note and the North Africa note. The North Africa notes had a very distinct yellow treasury seal on the bill, and they were the only bills to ever have this. And only the US soldiers stationed in North Africa were ever given this emergency issue paper currency, never the general population. And the US soldiers were in North Africa during the early 1940s for Operation Torch. And when I was doing some research about the North Africa notes, I thought it was really interesting that the American soldiers were still paid in cash at this time, even though they were abroad. And the Hawaii overprint note looked like this. As you can see, it had a brown treasury seal instead of a yellow one on the North Africa notes. It also had the text Hawaii printed on the obverse and reverse, or front and back, of the notes. And on the back, as you can see, it was overlaid over the image, and this is why it's called the Hawaii overprint notes. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, the government issued an order recalling all of the regular currency that was on Hawaii, and shortly after they replaced it with the Hawaii overprint note. Now this left the government with about $200 million in cash in the regular old recalled notes. And instead of shipping all that cash back to the mainland and dealing with all the logistics related to that, they instead decided that they would just destroy it in place, and so they burnt it all. But why would the government create and issue these emergency issue notes in the first place? Well, in both cases, the US government was actually really concerned with these funds ever falling into the hands of the enemy. In North Africa, they were concerned with the Axis powers gaining control over the payroll funds that was meant to go to the soldiers. And in the case of Hawaii, they were concerned with the Japanese coming over, invading Hawaii, and taking control of the funds of the general population there. And if either of these scenarios played out, then the US government could say that this emergency issue money was worth nothing, just like that. And this would leave the enemy holding money that was totally worthless, and so they wouldn't gain any sort of upper hand by capturing this money. From a tactical perspective, this is really smart, and I'm really glad that the US government thought to do this. However, this also made me wonder if the US government could ever deem my cash that I'm holding today at a whim to be worthless, and what would the impacts of that be? For those who may not know this already, each US dollar bill has a unique serial number on it, and so it probably wouldn't be very hard for the US government to say that all of the currency with a serial number that falls into a certain range is suddenly worth nothing. So the answer to the question, could the US government do this, is probably yes. However, if you ask, would the government ever do something like this? I would say probably not. And if I ever personally saw the US government do something like this, I think I would panic as well, and I would probably immediately transfer all of my US dollars into some other store of value. Now this could be gold or silver or maybe cryptocurrency, something that the government doesn't necessarily have control of in order to protect my assets. And I probably wouldn't be the only person in America doing this. If everybody in the nation suddenly devalued the US dollar and they didn't want it anymore, well, that would make it worth absolutely nothing, and so it would crash and kill the economy. And it's my opinion that there are far too many politicians who have far too much money that they have an incentive not to let something like this happen. And while I don't necessarily think that a lot of the politicians are very smart, I do think that they are smart enough not to do anything that would really hurt the US dollar and the US economy. And it's because they're self-motivated, which in this case is actually a good thing because it helps you and me as well. Also, we see that if the government ever had a need for this, then they would probably just issue another emergency issue series of paper money, and then they could devalue just that subset of the money if and when they ever had to. That said, if you still have a healthy distrust in the US government, then you could start today to convert at least part of your US dollars into another store of value. And this could be precious metals or cryptocurrency. These are things that the government doesn't have any direct control over, and so it might be a wise investment. But if you're thinking about buying cryptocurrency for the first time, you should really check out my other video that tells you some things that you need to know before you buy cryptocurrency. Anyway, if you found found this video interesting, or if you learned something that you didn't know before, consider hitting that thumbs up below, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, consider subscribing as well. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time.